Hey, Logan.
Hey, Sid, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Just, yeah, have you got time to talk now?
I do.
Nice.
I do.
Um, so, yeah, just wanting to cover anything, any additional stories that you'd like. So yesterday I talked to your brother Sam, and
Yes.
we went mostly into the Brannons and the Woods, and
Uh-huh.
and then we went into your father's employment history. But yeah, whatever you want to talk about. Like I said, the video is probably going to be, talking, starting on, mostly diving into Lewis Thomas Brannon, the grandparents, but any additional ancestor that you'd like to cover, we can absolutely include as well.
Listen, you got the pictures that I sent you. You got.
I did. Yeah. So I see, yeah, you've got a picture of a few stories. And
Yes.
then you've got a picture of the cover of a book, Mama Country, Dale County, Alabama, by Manonia
Manona. And the way
Manon,
they pronounce
Monona
Manona Snell.
Snell. And then you've got
Yes.
3 pages here.
Right. That's just our page. That's the Jehoiakim. Joel Jehoiakim Brennan is our great great grandfather. See now, I believe that's right. Great great grandfather, and it's all of his children, and individually all of their children. I may not have Robert Edwards. Robert Edward was the last child, and he is in that picture. Let's see. Yes, he is in that big picture of all the Brannons back from the early 20s, I think is when it was. Robert Edward is in that picture, along with our granddaddy, Lewis Brannon, is in there, and all of his brothers and sisters are in there. And that's that previous picture that we talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what I did, I just set that handwritten thing. I was afraid you might not be able to read some of it, but I just wrote that's that little outline I wrote down about Pal, about my grandfather. And the first story is, well, the first thing I wrote down was one of the most outstanding things in my mind. Not, it really is not. I guess all in all, the fishing trips that I went on him with, and the trips to up and down the road, up and down 431 between Dothan, Edmond, Newville, Cap Station, and Abbeville was his route. That was his star route, is what they called that. And he had a contract with the postal service to do that job, and he bid on it every so often. I really don't know the details about that, but I do know that he had to bid on the job, and he managed to get it every time during my growing up life. And so I'll tell you more about that. Let's see. I don't even know where I've got it, but the first thing I've got down here is written is Marvin Holman. You're not going to know any of these Well, you may know some of the Holmans. Russell Holman, who was the mortician here in town, and was Wayne's classmate, my brother Wayne's classmate. The families are very close. Holmans and the Brannons. In fact, I heard my daddy say more than once that the, the Holmans might have starved had it not been for his mother's garden and his mother and daddy's garden. So they ate out of it too, because they moved in right next door. I believe moved in right next door to Mama Kate and Pap. That's Pap is Lewis Thomas, and Mama Kate is Sarah Catherine. That's the way you were referring to it. But all I ever knew was Pap and Mama Kate, and some people called him Pop. Some people around town and in Abbeville, in particular, called him Pop Brannon. So that's another little tidbit about Lewis Thomas Brannon. But getting back to the Holmans, I don't know what my granddaddy did early in life, any earlier than this, but I do know that when Daddy was a little boy, maybe just born, they lived in Dothan, Alabama, right off of South Apple Tree Street. That's one of the main streets running north and south, but not the main street. That's well, it may be Main Street, or I can't call the name of it right this minute. Foster Street is one over to the east, and then there's one more over to the east, and then South Apple Tree Street. The deal is where he lived, and Daddy tried to show this to me, Logan. He tried to show me the house that they lived in, and we went around and around in that area trying to find it. This was 40 or 50 years ago. And he couldn't find it then. He couldn't find the house. He said, I think they probably torn the house down, but it's right in this area, which is just a little bit south of where the Holman's Mule Barn was. This guy named Marvin Holman, who happens to be, I told you, he was the great-great-grandfather of my boss at Landmark Park. William Holman was the director at Landmark Park, where I worked the last 15 years of my working life. And William was the director at Landmark. I happened to be a state employee, but he was my supervisor, my immediate supervisor. This is a great-great-grandson of Marvin Holman, who my grandfather worked for. Pat Brannon worked for Marvin Holman. And I don't think he did much with the mules. Mr. Marvin was a businessman of the first order. He knew tricks. And Pat, I say tricks. These were sort of. It was certainly nothing illegal, but it was shady stuff. You might liken him to a used car salesman. You might liken him to that. Not. I think that Mr. Marvin would have had a better name, a better reputation than a lot of people give used car salesmen. But they would do all kind of tricks with mules. They would take. I've heard these stories from both sides of the family. Well, I heard this from the Holman side of the family. If he was trying to sell a mule, they would take him to the back, and his helpers would take a lemon, cut it in two, and rub the mule's teeth with lemon to get the tartar and whatever all the brown stain might be on the mule to help him look better.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing they would do when they put them in the ring, put them in a ring to run them around and let these farmers look at them, he would say, $200. Or I'm going to say $100. Holler out, $100. And then he'd say, down. And then he'd say something else, trying to jack the price up and see how they would watch the crowd and see how they grimaced whenever he said certain figure. That's just, I think that was common in mule traders back in the day.
So Mr. Holman was running the auction place, and then Pap was kind of an employee, almost, or a contractor or something that he would say, hey, I need you to help me to get the price up. Is that kind of the relationship between Marvin Holman and Pap?
Yeah, not so much in the mule barn. Mr. Holman had several irons in the fire, and one of which was selling organs on the side. He had, whenever it was time to have a mule sale, I'm sure he'd be there doing all these things that we're talking about. But he also sold organs, and he knew that he'd pick out a farmer. He'd have a farmer in mind that had the money, that was a pretty good farmer, and all he needed was to have 2 or 3 daughters. And wasn't any radios, wasn't anything back then much. So it was singing and telling stories, some of it was reciting poems, some of which I do just for the heck of it, but because I heard them when I was little from my mother. And so did Wayne, and so did Sam. Anyway, it was singing, picking and singing, and that sort of thing for entertainment, and playing instruments. Well, this is how my granddaddy kept Marvin Holman. Mr. Holman would already have a family picked out. He may have even already talked to the farmer, and the farmer would say, I can't afford it. I cannot afford it. Don't buy them. So they would wait till, I say that's Pap and Marvin Holman. They would wait till a cloud was in the sky. Maybe most every summer, it's like that around here. There's pop-up thunderstorms all over in certain times. So they'd wait till a cloud was coming, and they'd take that organ on the back of his truck, and they'd pull up in the yard, come pulling up in this yard where the lady was at home, the girls were at home, and the farmer was out plowing the mule in the field. And he'd say, "Oh, please let me unload this on your front porch. I'm afraid it's going to rain. We're going to ruin this organ." That's what Mr. Holman would tell them. And they would, she would agree. This is just a story, a generalized story. This is the plan that they used. They'd unload that organ, and Mr. Holman would thank them. Pap was there, help unload it, load it. They'd ease down and get where they could still hear, in earshot of the house, and all of a sudden they'd hear it play. Those girls would get out there on the front porch and start playing. It was pump organ, pump it with your feet to power it. We had one on display at Landmark Park in the front, one of the front bedrooms. Anyway, that's what happened. And boy, if Mr. Holman heard that those girls are already singing and playing, he knew he had to. He was half won on the sale. Then he'd after that he'd come back out there, and when Pat was a good singer. He led the singing for the Methodist Church at night on Sunday nights. They would get out there. Mr. Holman and Pat would sing with those girls as they played the organ. Oh, and they just have a big singing hymns, that sort of thing. Anything the girls could play. Now, how they learned how to play, I don't know. Maybe they did that at church where they didn't have an organ. I do not know. I just heard the story, and it was so cool. It just engulfs me and completely takes my mind. But anyway, then he'd see the farmer, and the farmer said, "Come get that organ. I can't afford it. I can't afford it." He's, "Well, we'll do some terms. You don't have to do that. Those girls are enjoying it so much." And then the girls are working on daddy too. The girls and mama were working on the daddy, and that's how they sold organs, Logan. It is a wonderful story.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Okay, now that was I'm gonna name you the. I worked with William's daddy. William's daddy came out and volunteered. He was a well-known stocks and bonds guy in Dothan.
What's William's last name?
William Holman.
Oh, Holman.
See, they're cousins to the mortuary Holman family in Headland. I don't know just how close they are. I mean, I think Marvin. I didn't tell all the story. I didn't tell this properly. The Holmans that were destitute, they were from a wealthy family. There's a house in Ozark, Alabama now called the Holman House. He was a doctor, I believe. I'm not sure he was in the mortuary business. I think he was a doctor. I'm not sure. But if you look up Ozark, Alabama, and Holman House, I'll bet you they're on the internet. I bet you there are pictures of it right now. So they were from a wealthy family, but they had a split up. When Wilton was the man that came over here, Wilton and his wife Sybil, they had 3 boys. Russell, Wayne's age. Norman was 2 or 3 years younger than Sam, about Mark Espy's age. And then they had John Robert as the last son, and he was 1 year younger than I. But we've been mother and Sybil were very, very close friends. Big Alabama fans. They're all big Alabama fans. Anyway, I'm getting off subject, but these Holmans, William was my boss. Ran Landmark Park, which is a living history and natural science private museum, a private organization here in Dothan, and they got the state's agricultural museum site listed here. So this is the site of Alabama's official Museum of Agriculture, and that's where I went. I had been farming some. I farmed some, then I worked for the city some, and then I ended up working down there for 15 years, demonstrating farming. I tell everybody I'm a farmer and an actor. I had to act like an 1890s farmer when I was working down at Landmark, plowing a mule, learn how to plow a mule while I was there, doing crop demonstrations, letting kids pick cotton, that sort of thing. So that's what I did. But William was my boss. His daddy was named Mace, who was a stocks and bonds guy. very well known and favorably known. His daddy was named Bob, who had a tractor dealership. His daddy had a mule barn. Well, when the tractors came out right after the war, they began to mass produce tractors, as you know, Ford and all that, Massey Ferguson. So Marvin's son, Bob, branched out into tractors. When mules were going away, that's what they did. They did very well. Then he had a son named Mace, and then William was my boss. That's the chronology of that. And I'm about through with it. Unless you've got a question about that little story.
Nope. It's
I told you.
yeah. So yeah, Marvin, Bob, Mace, and William.
That's right. That's the way it goes down. And see that it's almost like a generation. Somehow they gained a generation because Marvin and Pap were the same. They weren't the same age. Marvin was older. Marvin he was favorably known, but he was also a little infamous. He pulled out a pistol on somebody, I think, and shot him, or maybe he didn't shoot him. He threatened somebody. I don't know why. In fact, there's an article. I think I've got it in some of my files. I say my files. I've got it on a computer file. I was going through, and I think I saw that the other day. And if I do, I'll make a copy of it. That's just happened. So this home and family, it's part of our history. It is. So you might want it.
Yes, it's good to have.
All right, listen. He also got put in a hospital. I can't call the name of the hospital. I think it was Edge Memorial at the time, but it's the same. I think it's the same hospital that I was born in. I was born in Dothan in a hospital there, and Dr. Thomas Woods, let's see now, my grandmother owned Pap's wife's family, is who the Woodses are, and I'm not so sure that I think Thomas was actually a son of a brother. Maybe it was a nephew. I don't know the relationship in Thomas Woods, but he was an OBGYN, and he delivered me. And Daddy told me that the bill was $44, and Daddy didn't have the $44, and the lady that was in charge of dismissing Mother and me wouldn't have it. She wanted the money, and so he said he got his cousin Thomas Woods, who was the doctor, to vouch for him, and he managed to pay me off. But he told me that's what you were worth, $44. It's a cute story. Okay, I'm all for the homers now. If I think of something else, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
I told you this is going to be long.
Oh, that's good.
And we have just gotten started.
Yeah.
This is just one page outline that I drew here. I drew up. Dead Lakes is another story. It's another place that I think to my soul that place was one of the best times in my life. I'm tearing up thinking about it. Pap and Mama Kate loved to fish. Mama Kate loved to fish as good as Pap did. And Daddy was an expert bass fisherman. When Lake Eufaula opened up, Julian Brannon and Oscar Ezel, his brother-in-law, Oscar married Emily, mother's sister. They stayed up at that lake a lot fishing. I mean, they caught big bass. You've probably seen pictures of them. But Daddy got that honest from his mother and Daddy that liked to brim fish. Mama Kate loved to brim fish. Pap, on the other hand, liked to fish with the live bait, shiners. Shiners are about a 6 or 7 inch long fish, bait fish. And he could buy them. And when we'd be fishing for brim, Pap would have a stiffer pole with heavier line. And hooked on there, he'd have a shiner that would be swimming around, had a big old ball cork. It was 1.5 inches across, I'll bet you. But the shiner was big enough that he could make the bobber bob in the water. And I watched it a lot when I'd be fishing with mine. I'd look over there at his cork, and it'd be big and bobbing around that fish. And then pretty soon, if he put it in the right place, he'd catch a big bass. I can tell you another story.
And that's Dead Lakes is in Florida.
Dead Lakes is in Florida,
Okay.
and I think it was a great place to fish there at one time. I think they've either torn down a dam that was backing up some of that water. I'm not sure what's happened, but I don't think it's as hot a fishing spot as it used to be. Here's what we do. I've got written down here this 55 Chevrolet that I told you. I think that I told you. I told somebody recently about it. I may not have said it. This car is the one. This is the car. It was a blue 4-door. I think maybe it was a 2-door. I believe it was a 2-door. 55 Chevrolet, and it was not that old when Betsy was born. When your grandmother was born. Let's see, that's not right. It's your Betsy's.
My aunt.
Betsy will be your aunt. Betsy will be your aunt. All right. When Betsy was born, I was in the 4th grade, going into the 5th grade that summer. She was born in June, and we as soon as she was born, we borrowed Daddy borrowed Pap's car, and we loaded up the thing, and no air conditioning. I don't know that it had a radio on, but we took off for Salt Lake City and spent the first night south of Little Rock in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. The next place in Missouri somewhere, I believe. Maybe I'm really not sure about that. It was night. I was tired and probably been asleep when we finally found a hotel. Then the next place was in Garden City, Colorado. And then the next place we stopped was Salt Lake City, Utah. We went on the same car, and Pap I guess it would be on like Thursday afternoon. He'd go get all his fishing tackle, get all the fishing poles fixed like he wanted, and he had little clips that clipped on that car, and he'd tie all the poles on there with rags or strings, and it may be a wad, like 4 inches around. It would just be a wad of poles, and we'd take off to that afternoon, or right after lunch, whenever he got through with his route, maybe, because he had to have somebody to run his route the next day or two. And my friend Bill Griggs, my old high school buddy down the street, college roommate, and the guy that I still am very close to, who lives in Bellingham, Washington now, his granddaddy was also called Pap. He was called Pop or Pap. And he sometimes filled in for my granddaddy on that mail route. And he and Phil's older brother Winston Griggs, and who lived right down the street, even down the street from Pap, 2 or 3 houses. Lived on the corner, on the southeast corner of Forest and King Street, the one that the Methodist Church is on, real close. But he did fill in, and I've heard stories about that. I'll have to tell those later. But anyway, we'd go down and stop somewhere in Cottonwood at the ice plant and get a block of ice. Occasionally you can find block ice nowadays, but not often. But he'd put it in this little Coca-Cola, little red Coca-Cola ice box that a 15-cent chunk of ice would fit into, and that would be our refrigeration. Maybe they had a refrigerator in the cabin that they did. Down in Dead Lakes. At some fish camp, I've tried to see if I could go find it again, but I didn't. Somebody obviously take some old folks to be able to tell us where it was. Anyhow, we go, and then once we get there and unload the stuff in the cabin that they rented, he'd also rent a little boat, a little wooden boat, homemade cypress boat. And I would sit in the middle. Mama Kate would sit at the front, or vice versa. But Pat was at the back, and he'd always carry a little motor he had. I think it was a 5-horse or 4-horse gasoline truck, like a trolling motor now, but it was just a gasoline motor to move us around. And Logan, there were cypress trees everywhere. I was lost the whole time that we were fishing. I had no idea where we were. But he knew where the channel was, and he knew where to go fish, and he knew how to get back to the channel. And we didn't dally. When it got close to night, we got on back, got home. But they had a big long shed. They had 2 or 3 cabins that you could rent, not just little houses, nice little houses. And Mama Kate would cook. Mama Kate was a great cook. The main thing that I forgot to tell you is that on the way down, Mama, she would cook fried fruit pies. We didn't have apples. We did have pears, and in season she would make pear pies. In season we would have Big Newton. She'd take the figs that got too ripe, that wouldn't look pretty in a jar of fig preserves. She would take them and save them up, and even some bird pigs. Sometimes birds would pick the figs. She'd save all those, and she'd cook them down really sweet and make gingerbread. I can taste them now. That was another one of my favorites. And these fruit pies. She'd fry the fruit pies, but she'd bake those fig Newtons. The fruit pies were made from rehydrated dried fruits you'd buy in the store. Unless just nobody had apple trees. They had crab apple trees, but they were too tart. She'd make them out of the rehydrated dried fruit. But they would be fried, and I'd usually ask for one on the way down. I'd eat one fried pie on the way down, and then we'd share the rest of them as long as they lasted. Never have tasted anything better in my life. Okay. But we'd get down there and go fishing for a little while. It would be a good while before dark. We'd go out fishing, fish sort of close to the camp, to the fish camp is what it was. They had a little store there. I don't remember ever buying anything in that store. We took whatever we were going to eat. We were self-sufficient in that respect because of Mama Kate and all her kids. But then we'd come back in, spend the night, and get up before daylight and go. They had a long 10 covered. I'm saying 10 covered. It's the best I can remember. It was 10. I know a lot of them use wooden cypress shingles to shingle their house with down in Florida. And around here too, there were wooden shingles they had. Anyway, it was a long thing that would hold probably 20 boats. A long white shed that would come to the shore and keep the rain stuff off of the boats. And yet these old cypress boats probably were sealed with turpentine. I don't know, rosin from the turpentine making process. I don't know. Naval stores is what they call that. That's where they scratched the longleaf pine trees and caught the turpentine and distilled it. That's all another story. It just had a bunch of boats for sale in different sizes. Well, one day, this is an interesting story. One day, I was out and Mama Kate was probably cooking powder or what may have been cleaning fish or getting ready to go. I was just out there kicking around the boathouse. Then it was all out there and boats packed here and there and spots missing where a boat had been taken out. Well, there was a little colored girl there, a black girl, and she had her fishing pole. And I watched her walk up, and I looked at her and thought, that girl doesn't know what she's doing. She's fishing right here under this, trying to catch a fish right here under all these boats. I had no longer got that thought through my thick head, and she pulled out one of the biggest brim that I ever seen. She caught a fish under that boathouse, and I thought she was crazy fishing there. I'll never forget that as long as I live. You got anything else? I told you about the fishing poles. I told you about renting the cabin. And, Pap didn't make a whole lot of money. He made a good living, but the fact that they would take me with them, and they took Wayne and Sam too, just like that. And they took those boys while he was younger, and he'd go to the regional meetings of the postal carriers. They went to San Antonio, Texas, I believe, one time. I can't. You'll have to get Sam to delve into that. That's another pretty good story. And then I got the shed, the wooden shed, and the Cypress boats, the boathouse, and the black girl fishing. All right, let me come back to town now. That's just one trip. There's another place called Ochese, Ocheesee, I think is how it's spelled. It's an Indian name, and it's a natural pond down in Florida. I think it's close to Tallahassee. And it was a cypress swamp, cypress pond full of fish. My Uncle Bob Solomon, that was Grandmother Van's brother, loved to go fishing down there. Sarah, lots of folks from around here would go to Ochese fish. Pap was one of them, and Daddy was one of them later. He was mainly interested in bass, but it's a good bass and brim fishing hole. That's just another place that we did go. A lot of people would go to the coast in the wintertime to catch speckled trout. But Pap never did do that. Never did. He was not into that kind of fishing. All right, back home, down where Sam lived, where Mama Kate Pap's old house. It's actually. I don't know if you're familiar. You know where the porch house was? That big house that Sam and Uncle Jim and I opened up for a restaurant.
Yeah.
And Linda.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a house on the corner across the street, coming south on Forest Street. You go across West Church Street, where 2 doors down was where Grandmother Van raised all of her kids and Granddaddy Van. But you keep on coming south after you cross the street, one on the corner. Then 102 Forest Street is the next. That's the house that I inherited. That's the house that Wayne and Sam and I were raised in. 3 of us raised in one little house that's probably, I bet you it's I think I figured it one time, 940 something square feet, one bathroom. That's where we were born. And that's where we lived after we were born. In fact, Wayne was born in the house next door, Annie Crump's house. That's Mama Kate's sister. Mama Kate's youngest sister, I believe, was a school teacher. Anyway, where am I? Pat, down to where Pat lives. I do remember when I was a little boy, I'd stayed down there as much as I stayed anywhere. I'd go across the back fence we had cows in the backyard. Daddy was a cowman big time. He loved cows as much as I did. I love them as much as he did. And his whole family was cattle oriented, especially the Woodses, Mama Kate's side of the family. That's Charles Woods and James Earl Woods and Hugh and all of Uncle Curry. Uncle Curry was Mama Kate's brother. They are in that picture that you showed. You sent Sam. You remember that?
Or Sam sent us, right?
Okay, maybe he did.
Yeah, last night.
Yeah. You're right. Last night. He named a bunch of them, but I can point out one or two more that he didn't. We can do that at the end or next time.
Yeah.
This is getting long, but what I wanted to tell you was they had some big steps going up to the back door, and out in the backyard was a big fig tree. I can remember, and on the other side of that fig tree was the chicken yard. He had hog wire, and maybe he had hog wire, and then he had some of it covered with chicken wire to keep the chickens in when they couldn't get out. But it was open. He worried about hawks. Hawks would come and catch a chicken every now and then. And then he had a little chicken house that I'd go in and gather the eggs. That was another favorite thing to do. Get to go in the chicken house. And he also had some roosters sometimes that were mean. And they'd flog me and I'd run to the gate. That was terror. But usually a bad rooster didn't last long in his chicken pen. He ended up as his drumsticks, his thighs, and breasts. So And they all, grandmother, I told you what Mama Kate was a great cook. So was Grandmother Van for that. But I'm talking about the Brannons now. Uh, she would, Pat would, whenever she was going to have Sunday dinner, when her daughter might come in from Cloud, her daddy's older sister, 6 years older than he was named Eleanor. And Daddy couldn't say Eleanor. And when he tried to say sister, he called her Toot. Toot. Anyway, that was her nickname. We all called her Toot. All of my life. Eleanor's her name. And she is in that picture. She is in the picture behind Mama Kate. I'll have to point those out later. Anyway, when they were coming, Mama Kate would cook Sunday dinner. And I mean, it was all absolutely delicious. The only thing I can remember that I could not eat as a youngin' was asparagus. She would, I think it was canned asparagus, and for some reason I didn't like the look or the smell or whatever it was. I just could not eat it. And now I don't eat it a lot, but asparagus is one of my favorite vegetables, even canned. Now most everybody gets them fresh and steams them, and it's real healthy food. I can eat them right out of the can. That's just amazing to me how, with age, your tastes and preferences change. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But she had a wood stove that she cooked on for a long time when I was little. And finally, when Daddy was in the hardware store, he got her he helped him get a electric range. So, but she was very adept at cooking on the wood stove, and it was a heater. And changed a little bit. Let me go on and say, now that I'm talking about that wood stove, I can remember her heating coffee on it, and it's hard to keep it moderate temperature. It's either going to be hot or too cold, and she'd get it too hot, and Pap would saucer his coffee. I don't know if you've seen that before, but that was a treat of my growing up life to watch my granddaddy pour that hot coffee out into the saucer that came with it, and it would spread it out enough, it would cool off quicker, and he would lift the saucer up and drink the coffee out of the saucer. They call that saucering coffee. Never see it today. It's all, what is that fancy coffee place that everybody goes to? I went to it once or twice in the airport one time. That's too fancy stuff for me. I can't even call the name of it now. The guy from Washington State or California. No matter. But that was one thing. She also was, I told you she was a great cook aside from I didn't tell you the gruesome part. She'd send Pap out there to get her a hen. She'd want a hen to cook where it'd have plenty of fat in it, where she could flavor the food up with it rather than just a fryer. She'd get a hen and it'd boil it and make it'd be enough chicken for everybody to eat. And then she'd have all that stock left over to cook with from then on. But Pap would go pick out an older hen. Follow me. And he, in that fig tree I was telling you about, this is right there on Forest Street, 102, 104, 108 Forest Street is what it is. He had a wire hung up in that fig tree, a big fig tree. And he would catch the chicken, and he'd hook that chicken's leg somehow where it couldn't get out. Or maybe he tied it in. I don't remember all that. And then he'd turn that chicken upside down and slit her throat. And that chicken would flap her wings and spread blood all over the ground, all over the fig tree. And when she finally quit flopping and kicking and drained completely out, he'd take her down and go over to where Mama Kate had the hot water boiling. They'd souse that thing down in there for long enough to make the feathers turn loose. Scalding is what they call it. And then I'd get the help. Pick the feathers off, and pretty soon they'd all be gone, and there'd be only pin feathers left. Pap would light a piece of newspaper, and I think just roll it up, hold it in his hand, and he would singe all the little pin feathers that were there, little tiny feathers that formed into a real feather. And then Mama Kate would take the chicken. Then I'd go in the house with her, and I remember her clearly showing me when she dressed it, the reproductive tract of the chicken had soft eggs right there before for the next day or two the chicken was going to lay, and those eggs just gradually worked down in size till there were little eggs that like well, the smallest one was bigger than a pinhead, but that was just amazing to me. And she knew how to cut a chicken up, floured it, fried it, or cooked the hen probably like whole. But that was amazing to me. Of course, nobody, when they did make ice cream, homemade ice cream, nobody had any electric ice creams, and we got to turn the crank to make the ice cream back then. All right, then getting to the end here, wood stove, fig Newtons, I told you that. Yard cake was another thing she was very well known for. When she took that to the dinners over at the church, when they'd have a dinner at the church, I remember our cousin on the other side of the family, M. Solomon, who was a very, very astute businessman and landowner. He loved Mama Kate's yard cake. It's sort of a spice cake with either a white icing on top or you can add coffee to that white icing and it'll be a little brown. And you can add orange juice to it, it'll be a little yellow. It didn't make the taste change a taste change much, but that was two things she was well known for: fig Newtons and yard cake.
Why do they call it yard cake?
It's about a yard long. It was like a sheet pan. It wouldn't fit into most ovens these days, but it would fit into hers. But it was a long sheet pan. It made it, instead of making a cake like a pound cake or a layer cake, this was just one layer. And it was a big long one, and she spread that icing on top, cut them into squares. But Sam Brannon has made many one up at the porch house, trying to perfect it. He's the one that was experimenting with with coffee. He'd read in the space. Some put coffee in it, some did plain, and some did orange juice.
Okay.
And I told you about the Sunday dinners. I think. Oh, let me do this. Let me while we're doing it. I told you about Daddy's sister, Eleanor.
Yep.
She is in both pictures, and I can point them out. The picture of the family gathering at the old house up at Center Church, and I'm not sure. I think that picture that Sam sent you yesterday was actually made over in Georgia, so south of Donaldsonville, where Uncle Grady left Headland, who was the mayor of Headland at one time, Grady Woods, and then after that, Billy Woods, my contemporary. He's my age, my third cousin. And he actually married my first cousin on the other side of the family, Mila Espy. The Espys were the wealthy people in our family. And Edith married mother's sister, and Emily's sister, and May's sister, and Kate Helen's sister married Major Espy. And so all their, anyway, I don't know why I got on that. I was telling you about Uncle Grady Woods. He was a mayor, and Billy Woods was James Earl, Daddy's first cousin, James Earl, and then Charles Woods was an adopted son of Annie Crump, and not Annie Crump, it was Players Woods. So, and Charles was one who got burned in the service and ran for president, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure, but he was that's who Daddy worked for a lot of his life. He was a car salesman when I was little for Solomon Motor Company in Dothan. Then he and mother's cousin Sam Carr, Mr. Sam Carr, went in the hardware business together, and he did that for a long time until Charles Woods, his cousin, offered him a job as salesman and main ramrod for all the houses that he was building, and that's how Daddy got into the building business through Charles. When Charles went out of business, Daddy went into business himself, and when I got out of Auburn, that's what I did for the first 2 or 3 years. built houses, and I decided then that farming was too cool. That may have been a mistake. Although it worked out fine. I would never have gotten the job at Denmark Park had I not done that. No regrets. No regrets on that. What I was going to tell you about was Eleanor. She married a guy named Rob. Eleanor's daddy's older sister, 6 years older. Married a guy named Robert Shaw from Clio, whose daddy was a doctor from a very well-known family up there. And he worked various jobs, but they had 2 children, Judy, my age, Judy Shaw, and Rita Shaw. Rita is the only one left, immediate family. She is our closest immediate cousin from Daddy's sister, Eleanor. And she lives at Gulf Breeze. Gulf Breeze is a bridge between Gulf Breeze and South Pensacola, Florida. I don't think it's an island. I think it's joined by a bridge on that end, but on the other end, I think it's hooked to the land, so it's a peninsula, I suppose. But she would be one that you'd probably want to talk to also. She can give you her mother's perspective. I'm just giving you my perspective from growing up here. They grew up in Clio and eventually moved over to Andalusia, to Ghent, Lake Ghent. And that's where they both died, I believe. I sent you a number in her, a little, I think I sent you a number, and it had some other information where they live now. She married a guy named Bill Rohn from Bonifay, Florida. So there's another contact. She can give you the Eleanor Brannon Shaw rundown on this family. Now, that's all I've got on this outline for today. I'll work on something else for next week.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was very helpful. A lot on Mama Kate and Lewis Thomas, and yeah, growing up going fishing with them. Next time we talk, or what do you want to focus on next?
That's a good question. So that's got Pap. I can say about I've got some other records if I can find them. I'm sort of a junkie. Oh, I'm worse than that, Logan.
No worries.
Well, it does. It's bothering me now. It hasn't bothered me. It has bothered me, but I've not decided that I've got to do something. This is sort of a mental thing. It's bigger than just a junkie guy, or it's almost, well, hoarder comes to mind. I'm probably a hoarder too.
Well, hopefully getting all this documented helps you resolve anything on that end.
But it certainly might. It may, and that I told you the other day that I was so thankful that you're doing this. You're taking on a big project, and I know you're up to it.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm not. I'm too disorganized to do anything like this. But I'm trying to do better. I've got to do better. I'm out here in the house that Sam and I own. Sam owns 2/3 of it because he bought your granddaddy's part.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm staying out here. This will give you a little more insight into the whys and the wherefores. Our Aunt Mary, who is Mother's baby sister, who was born after Granddaddy Van died. Granddaddy Van never saw her, and she never saw him because he passed away at a young age, but he had accumulated a bunch of land. And the kids had to suffer a little bit for that because he was always buying more land, and they just lived very close. Depression time is when he died, and they had plenty to eat because of all the farms that he had and tenants that could supply some stuff. And they did sugarcane. I don't need to get into that. I'll do that when I got that band and all the Van brothers and sisters. There's a bunch of them, but they were a tight family and stayed that way. Looked after their mother. And now getting back to how I started was They May is here. She lives over in Jim's old house, right on Main Street, behind where Mother and Dad, where this house is, where I am. 102 Brenda, and Bebe lives on Main Street. But as long as she is alive and down here, one of us, Sam and I, have talked this over, and we're going to stay here. Wayne wanted to get rid of it, or he wanted his share, and Sam bought traded him. I think they traded land somehow. So that's why I'm here, because Mame's here, and she's 91 years old, and she's not going to last that much longer. I hope she lasts to 109, 104, 105, but she may have to go stay with her daughter Susan in Birmingham. I'm sure she's able to look after herself very well now, but she may not, and then she'll be gone. Then I'll certainly have to do something, because we'll have to sell this house. I get my house fixed up on Forest Street, and that's where I plan to live. I inherited that. That was my part of the inheritance. So that's what I'm focused on. And
That's 102 4th Street.
102 Forest.
Okay.
Right. And you can look that up on Google Maps, easy as pie. And this is 102 Brenda Avenue. You've been here many times. You've been to the other one too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you've been to this house many times.
Yeah.
And it's way too big a house for me, and I've got it full of junk. Yeah. I'm going to do better. I've already started cleaning the outside of it. I let it look like it was a thrown away house, but it's looking better now. I'm getting the bushes and all cleaned out. I'm going to go all the way around this house and in the backyard, and I'm going to work on 102 Forest Street. I've trimmed it a time or two in the last. I hadn't done it in the last couple of years, and it needs it again. Anyway, that's the story about why we still got this house, and I'm still living in it. I'm gonna walk across the backyard away from her house. Although Sam's, he's up on King Street. He lives on 102. It's weird. We were born, and I said we were raised at 102 Forest Street. Then when they moved out to here, built this new house in the late 60s, 69, I believe it was. Before they moved in this house before I graduated from Auburn. Because when I graduated from Auburn, I moved into 102 Forest Street, the same house that I was raised in. And then when I left there in the 90s and got divorced, Alicia and Kate still stayed in that house. And then when Alicia got married and left, Kate and her husband lived there. And now I've got to redo a bunch of it before I can live there. So anyway, that's that little story.
Nice.
I hope you're recording that, because, you really don't. It's not a big deal, but at least you know the name. But what was interesting is we lived at 102, and my whole family did. Then when they moved out here, Sam actually stayed out here a while with Mother after Daddy died. He'd stay out here looking after her. And at night, and I'd come up from Dothan. I was staying with a friend of mine in Dothan, Janice. You probably had met her. But I'd come up and stay during the day if Mother needed anything. And then when Mother died, by then Sam the Third even lived out here too. When we all three were living here together. Sam the Third and his wife divorced. Debbie, they separated and divorced, and he didn't have his house fixed up where he lives now, where he was raised over on Cleveland Street. So he stayed in the middle hall room, and I stayed out here in his chair. My back is so in such a way that it's more comfortable for me to sleep in a recliner with my knees propped up a little bit, or I can sleep in a bed if I prop them up with pillows and stuff. Then Sam stayed in Daddy's own room back then. So there were three of us here together, and then Sam the Third moved out, and then Sam Brannon got his house on King Street. But that's the last of the story. He lives at 102 King Street. So it's 102 King Street, 102 Forest, and 102 Brannon, all in the Brannon family. It's just crazy.
Wild.
Yeah. Well, all right. You'll have to filter out half of this stuff.
No worries. It's good. It's good to have you. Like I said, we're y'all are probably going to give me tons and tons of material. I'd like to digitize, put all as much as I can on YouTube eventually, but I'm trying to, eventually whittle it down to, Lewis Thomas and Mama Kate and your father, and then the same. Like try to, yes, I don't mind getting more material than I can use for what I'm originally thinking of.
Great, great. Well, I wish you had noticed, and you probably got an outline on it, but notice in that book, I took the picture of the pages. The first page is sort of an introduction of the Brannons and the Galloways.
Yep.
Jehoiakim Brannon. Let's see now. Rozier is Jehoiakim's daddy. Rozier came from South Carolina, and I don't know. I can't remember. I think he was married at the time, but he married a Galloway who also came to this area. And if not, he married into the Galloway family, and there is still a big Galloway family over in Dale County. In fact, I left out one thing. I left out one thing about Pap. After he quit Atlason, before he got a job with the mail route, he had a gin. That's a great story. I'll tell you that one next time. I'll go in and I left that out. It has a connection to Panama City because his brother lived down there. Daddy is connected to that because he would go fishing down there when Pat would deal mattresses. He had a mattress factory. I told you he had a gin. He had I forget how many saw gin, like a 40 saw gin, which is a medium-sized cotton gin. And I'll tell you that later. I'll do that. The gin part and the mattress factory that he had actually it was Woods property. The Woods property is behind Forest Street now. It's lots back behind there. But I'll tell you all about that. I'll make myself an outline and be able to basically go down the list on it.
Okay.
Before I get into the bands, the Solomons, the bands are hard enough. Although we've got some genealogy on them. To think through Betsy, I think that's probably where this came from. We had a lot of, Jehoiakim got killed in Civil War, and on the Wood side of the family, you thought Jehoiakim was a funny name. On the Wood side, our great-great-grandfather that got killed as a result of the Civil War was named Epaminondas. Epaminondas, and they called him Pam. P-A-M was his nickname. But not only that, that's the two great-great-grandfathers that were killed in the Civil War on the Woods and the Brannon side. On the band side, our great-great-grandfather survived it. He got captured. And there's a pretty foul story about that, too. He got captured. And some of his brothers, he had several brothers that were killed. And Logan, the names of that group of uncles that got killed, great uncles, are just the same as the names today. Like James Wesley, that was Uncle Jim's name. And didn't have one named Felix, but Samuel, and I'm not sure Samuel got killed. That's another name of bands, and I've got that right on that table in front of me. I'll just have to find it. I'll have to find it. That'll be for another time. That'll be for the bands.
No.
Section. All right. Well, thank you for doing this again. I'm tickled to death that you're interested enough to do it, and history needs to be preserved.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Thank you for being willing to hop on the phone with me. And I'll call again next weekend and try to get. I just take every weekend try to get a little bit of progress on this.
Good deal. It all may not be as long as this, but it might be. If I can think it all through. I do know that I missed this on PAP, and why I didn't write it down, I don't know. But I'll add to that, and then maybe start on something else if I don't come up with enough material on the mattress factory. That's the key word, mattress factory.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good to talk to you, Logan.
Yeah, good to talk to you too. I'll let you go.
Okay. See you later.
See
Bye-bye.
ya. Bye.